I've said it once, I'll say it again. It is mind blowing how many listing agents don't call me, the lender, when accepting contracts. It is wild. I've said this before in a previous video. If you've seen it, we do hundreds of loans a year, and I can count on one hand or less how many listing agents actually call me to vet both me as a lender and the buyer and their ability to qualify. So it is mind blowing. So today, or this video at least, we're going to talk about the questions that a listing agent should ask about the buyer. So there's another video, we'll put a link somewhere around here about questions you should ask about the lender, like vet me as the mortgage mark, and vet me as a lender. What does my team look like? How do we do? There's a lot of good questions you should ask. That'll be a different video. Today, this video is to focus on questions that a listing agent should ask about the buyer to make sure that the contract you're about to accept is worthy, is good, and that you got a good buyer on the other side. So let's go through those questions. Again, I'll kind of hit the highlights. And as I've said before, the answers are important, but it's not everything. The answers are going to be about how does the lender answer? Are they giving you all the information? Do you feel like they're holding something back? Press, and understand a lender for a lot of these questions probably isn't, I know for a fact, isn't allowed to share a lot of these answers. However, maybe they will, maybe they won't. You can kind of get a feel for who you're dealing with and how professional they are to answer your questions or at least address your concerns without giving you all the intel. So if you, for example, you can say, how much money do they make? You can ask the question. There's nothing illegal about you, the listing agent, asking that question. The reality is the lender can't give that information. I shouldn't give it. If they do, fine, ask the question. All they can say is, hey, I can't give that information, but they make enough to qualify or whatever it is. So let's go through some of the, not just basic, but the really good questions about what you should ask to vet the buyer. So first and foremost, it's probably the obvious one that you guys know, which is, how do you know the buyer, right? Is this a sign call? How long you've been working with them? Were they referred by a realtor, from the buyer's agent, how they find you, how long you've been working with them, just kind of get a feel for what that relationship might look like. Then you can ask about like the credit risk. Have you pulled their credit? Was it a hard pull? Was it a soft pull? When did you pull it? Was this from 6 months ago? Or did you pull it in the last 30 to 60 days? Is there anything that needs to be addressed or rectified before we can close? So are they trying to update the credit? Are they trying to get a higher score to qualify? Are they trying to pay something off? Is there anything on the credit report they need to actually address before we can move forward? And just in general, how would you describe the credit? See what they say. They might say, hey, it's a good, strong credit report. If they give you a score, great. Any red flags that could come up about the credit or anything else what are your red flags on this thing? Is there any reason why you might not get the final approval? Is there any reason why you might not get it on time that could cause a delay in this from a credit or just a credit worthiness, whether it's income, assets, etc. On the income line, you could, are they employed? Have you verified their income? What sources of income do they have? What is the debt to income ratio? What is that bottom line debt to income ratio right now as it stands? Guys, if it's over 40%, call it 45. 45 is like makes me nervous. 43, 45 kind of makes me nervous because that's where a lot of programs are kind of shut down and you can't get the approval. What is their DTI? And again, the lender, they can say, man, I'm not going to share that with you because it's their information, not yours. And that's true, but they might answer. And so at least gives you the idea of what you're doing. Are they W-2'd? Are they self-employed? Are they contract? Is this a relo? Are they local? Do you have their tax returns? Have you verified their tax returns? Have you calculated the income? Have you had underwriting verify that income? Again, a lot of this is just asking the right questions to see how the lender responds. Hopefully they'll give you good intel and make you feel really good. I'm not saying you have to go through this checklist, and maybe you do. I've had somebody do that, and man, that person was super impressive. That's probably the best phone call I've ever received as a lender for somebody verifying who they were buying the house from. I was like, I hung up and I was so impressed. Assets. Have you reviewed their documents? Are there any large deposits? Are they getting a gift? Is the money not, is all the money already sourced and liquid and available? Let's see. Is it coming from the sale of a home? Do they have real estate? Do they have to sell in order to qualify? Are they using retirement accounts? Does the retirement account have to be liquefied? Are they using crypto? Are they using whatever? Like, ask all the information you can about the existing home and all that stuff. And then maybe some of the wild card stuff. Are they going through a divorce? Does that need to be finalized before they can do this? Are they waiting on a job change? Did they recently just change jobs and go from salary to, commission based? Do they need asset liquidation? Kind of hit some of those parts as well. Are there pending issues like maybe a legal event Are they, lawsuit got to get finalized, something like that. Like, again, those are the wild card ones, but at least we'll tell you that if you're asking those questions, it'll make you sound really, really smart and put the lender on guard in a healthy way that says, man, I'm dealing with somebody that actually knows what they're talking about and they're doing their homework for this. And then the final one is, hey, man, like, do you have everything you need from them? If not, what's outstanding? And you've been in the business, Mr. Lender or Miss Lender, for however long, do you feel solid? Is there any reason why I shouldn't accept this contract to make sure this is a good offer for my sellers? So if you go through and you ask all those questions and you just make sure that you got a really good feel, how that lender answers is really going to determine whether or not you do this. Because again, as a lender, I can't give a lot of that personal information, but I can certainly tell you what we've done. I can tell you that, hey, I feel good about this. I've been doing this for, since 2003. So I got decades under my belt. We got a great team. We have vetted all the necessary documents. Their credit has been pulled. We are comfortable. We've run it through, underwriting. We got the approval. We just need to button up a few things. We got 90% of their paperwork. The other stuff we're getting today, and it's trivial stuff. So it's all those questions that you guys need to ask and just listen how the answer is. And I would love your feedback. If you haven't done this, I would highly recommend you start doing that to make sure that you have less people falling through that can't qualify. It'll probably enhance or at least enable a smoother on-time closing for you and your sellers by picking a really good lender that's answering good questions with a really good buyer. I realize that's not always the case, right? If the home's been sitting there and this is the only offer, but at least by asking, you got it to some degree. You might just have to take it regardless of how good the lender is or isn't, regardless of how strong the borrower is or isn't. It's just one of those, I understand that, but at least going in, you can then set proper expectations for your sellers. Just say, hey, look, this dude, what kind of program are they doing? I didn't mention that, but you should, right? Is this conventional? The pre-approval letter should say that. Is that what you're going to close on? Or do you plan on switching this midway through? I know you submitted a conventional offer. Do you plan on switching this to FHA without me knowing before closing? Like, those are all good questions. You're allowed to ask them. The lender doesn't have to answer, but really good questions. So if you try this, I'd love your feedback for how this goes for you. Certainly, if you have other questions or suggestions to add into this list, let me know. But as always, we are here to help. And, as always, when you think mortgage, think Mark.